Yo, what is up everyone? Back here with another video. Today we're going to be going over some rain counters, or basically how to beat rain. So this is an archetype that's really common. You guys might notice I kind of have the same background, or like, like sweatshirt as last video. As I mentioned in my last video, I'm going away on vacation for a couple days with Sierra and like my dad, some of my family. So I'm gonna be away, but the video should be up. So I'm kind of recording these all in one shot to get them done ahead of time. So yeah, that's why I'm like in the same clothing, everything. But yeah, pretty much to get into it, with rain teams, right? Rain teams typically are very straightforward in terms of what they do. Obviously, it's focused on getting the rain user or rain abuser next to Polytoad or Pelipper, whichever setter you're using, to be able to exert a lot of offense. And they kind of do different things depending on where you are or like what you're doing. But the main thing to keep in mind versus these rain teams is they are limited, right? Because they do rely on weather, first off, to do well. And second off, they have to rely on their partners to deal with certain things that, like those two alone can't deal with, right? And you kind of see this shown through like a lot of rain teams, like their partners. The one thing I will say about every single rain team that you see, always expect to see a scissor on it. If you don't see scissor, then you kind of lucked out. But pretty much the main core of rain that you want to watch out for is always going to be Pelipper, Ludicolo, or Pelipper or Polytoad. It can be either. And then Pelipper, Ludicolo, and then Scizor, right? And like pretty much Scizor is like the guaranteed third on all these teams, because in this format it's very hard not to justify not having a steel type. And like even if you look at like Victory Road, right? Like this rain team had a steel type. This rain team had a Scizor. Like, and those were the only two rain teams in cut, right? So pretty good usage overall. And like we saw that Ludicolo and Pelipper and Polytoad were all in like decent usage. Like obviously not the highest, but like they still existed. And I had played a bunch of both, so it's pretty much a pretty relevant pair to keep in mind of. So I would definitely expect to see more of it as the game progresses, or like as the format progresses. Now you guys might be wondering, okay, well, how do I beat rain itself, right? So rain is obviously a little bit tricky because you have two water types, and then you have a steel type that kind of cleans up the things that typically remove the rain weather, right? So you have a couple different answers to rain, and we're going to be going over the different ones you have. So first off, the one thing that rain can be really weak to is manual weather. So this is a niche that's only filled by a couple of Pokemon, because you really need to be able to get like something like Sunny Day up sooner rather than later. If we look at it, not too many fast Pokemon, right? There's very few actual fast Pokemon that can outspeed it, if any, which I don't think there are. So you're pretty much forced into a position where majority of the time, if you're going to be doing manual weather changes, it's going to be Sableye, right? Now, Sableye is a Pokemon that hasn't seen too much usage yet, but I do think has a lot of potential, especially with Prankster. Pretty much able to go for Sunny Days immediately, along with Fake Outs, which can seriously disrupt terrain, especially because you're immune to Polytoads, or not Polytoads, Ludicolo's Fake Out. Now, I'm gonna actually change this to weather changing, right? So pretty much weather changing is a very important aspect of beating rain, right? And it can be essential to a lot of different teams. It's not always necessary depending on your team, but it's something that's really nice. So another option for that is actually Tyranitar, and then your other option to deal with it is Torkoal. But Torkoal I think is kind of bad, along with Ninetales. Now, there is one more option I wanted to go over that is sometimes utilized in formats like these. Some teams can be running a Ludicolo themselves, but pretty much what you can do on the Ludicolo instead of running a water move is just run Ice Beam, Giga Drain, and then run your own Sunny Day, and then Fake Out, or like even Protect, right? And basically what this allows you to do is it actually allows you to counter the opposing Ludi's weather, or like the opposing team's weather. And if you're the faster Ludi, you can just Sunny Day and completely ruin them, right? Because you're pretty much able to sit there, click Sunny Day, and then, their weather's gone, right? So these are just a couple of options to actually remove the sun from the opposing teams and kind of give you a bit of an edge there. Realistically, out of all of these options, I'd say Ludicolo, Tyranitar, or Sableye would probably be the most consistent. I think opposing Sun, or like Ninetales and Torkoal, are a little weak right now, unless there's a good composition that's found for them. So I'd say it's more biased towards like Sunny Day or like Sandstream, or Sunny Day on Sableye. So those are the main things to consider when you're really thinking about it, right? Now, beyond the actual weather changing that can check them, right? There are certain Pokemon that do really good into like rain teams. So we're gonna actually be going into that. So I'm just gonna say solid Pokemon into Rain teams. Now, basically, there's a couple of Pokemon that you can leverage that help you a little bit. So, Gastrodon does help you. You have to be very careful because obviously there's a Ludicolo. However, if you do pivot correctly, you can pretty much utilize your Gastrodon properly, swapping it in and out on turns where they're attacking your fire types with, like obviously water moves, and you can kind of bait it out, swapping the Gastrodon. Completely ruins Rain. You're able to do a lot of work with the Gastro, so definitely something that's worth utilizing or at least considering. Now, a couple of other options you have is pretty much fake out plus something. Now, the thing is with the fake out option is in terms of the, I'd say, viable fake out mons, you pretty much need to make sure that they can't be faked out or that you're getting some value out of them, right? Regardless of whether or not you get faked out. Now, basically the fastest fake out option that's actually pretty relevant in the format, I'd say, is going to be like Weavile or Raichu. If you're going to utilize another one, Kangaskhan with Inner Focus could actually be really decent as well. Kangaskhan has been popping up a lot recently, so wouldn't be surprised to potentially see that as an option there. And then Toxic Rogue is something that I haven't seen too much, but I think actually has some potential in the format. So pretty much like I'll just put Toxic Rogue down because like fast fake out, dry skin is really nice. Jinx also does a similar thing. So just one kind of Pokemon to keep in mind. Now, with that said, pretty much the main thing that these two Pokemon do is they're pretty much immune to one of the key moves or like take away from one of the key moves of the Rain Setters, right? Now, another thing you can do is potentially pair Fake Out plus something that can immediately pressure Ludicolo or something that can immediately set Trick Room, because Rain itself is pretty bad at stopping Trick Room, and you have some really good Trick Room setters that can really take advantage of that. For example, Cresselia is pretty good at countering Rain because you can kind of just sit in front of it. The thing that you need to be careful of is the Scissor like next to it, right? Or like the Scissor that might be in the back or something. And like having options to deal with that is what's important, right? As we continue to look at Trick Room setters, if we sort them by BST, you'll see that there aren't too many. Executor is like kind of a fringe pick that I've like seen a couple times, but I don't think it's particularly amazing. And as we continue down, you'll see there are not too many Trick Room setters besides Cresselia, right? Bronzong being one exception to that. But realistically, you probably want something like Cresselia, which is going to be able to take more damage, right? Now, another thing that you can do is lead something that will immediately KO or just be able to kind of disrupt with stuff like Thunder Wave, moves like that. Now, if we take a look at what has access to stuff like Thunder Wave that can kind of disrupt opposing teams, you'll see that there are very few options there. The one thing that I could see being really good in the Rain, which we had actually discussed Raikou in our last video, is pretty much being immune to Fake Out from Ludicolo, being able to Snarl, go for electric moves, and if this is potentially paired with something like Gastrodon, right, which is pretty much giving you Storm Drain to protect yourself, can be really good. Now, I'm going to also explain why certain Rain counters work in tandem, like it has to be two Pokemon rather than one. With two Pokemon, you pretty much have the flexibility to do multiple things versus a certain team. So, for example, Raikou and Gastrodon, let's say you lead Raikou and Arcanine, right? Raikou Arcanine lets you intimidate the Scissor if they lead it. That's usually on the Rain compositions. Then you can swap into Gastrodon. Unlikely that Ludicolo would click a Grass move into your Arcanine, right? And it's like more likely that a Water move was clicked. Raikou's able to get off a Snarl. You're able to swap in Gastrodon for free. Now you have pressure because your Gastrodon Storm Drain boosted. You can always swap it back in Arc, and the Ludicolo is -1. Now, that's just one line of play that you can utilize. Now, let's say we kind of put this together with a more complicated strategy, right? So let's say it's Raikou, Gastrodon, Tyranitar, Arcanine. Now you have a way to cycle the weather. You have a way to swap in the water moves that Ludicolo doesn't like, and you have a check for Scizor, right? So that's just kind of one example of like the ways you can kind of check Rain as a whole, right? There are obviously other cores that can deal with that. For example, as I mentioned, Fake Out Trick Room, right? And you can just go for Fake Out, click Trick Room. If, you're susceptible to Fake Out, there's probably something else you can click. And there are obviously a lot of different options, right? But that's kind of the main idea when it goes into discussing that kind of archetype and how you deal with it. So Rain is something that is very strong from a beginner standpoint because you have very clear lines. You're able to do a bunch of damage with water moves. You're able to go for Hurricane, Grass, Ice coverage, and that gives you a lot of offensive tools. However, as a Rain user, you have to be careful because if your opponent has a decent strategy like some of the ones I just mentioned, you're able to shut it down. And hopefully this helps contextualize for you guys how you're able to potentially stop Rain or slow it down, especially when you're playing versus it. So you're not just pretty much in a situation where they lead Pelipper, Ludicolo, and they wash you, or pretty much power wash you because you don't know what you're doing, right? It's pretty much about utilizing certain cores of Pokemon that match up well into Rain, or utilizing certain Pokemon that match up well into Rain. And as I mentioned, you know, Rain typically likes the Scizor core with it, so you kind of need to keep that in mind. So both weather changing and through certain cores of Pokemon, you can really take advantage of this and utilize them. So hopefully that was helpful for you guys. If you guys have any other questions about Rain teams or anything in general, make sure to let me know in the comments, and I will definitely make sure to do my best to answer and help you out. And thanks again, guys, for all the support, as always. It means a lot. Super, super appreciate it. And I'll see you guys on the next video, right? Peace.